Good morning, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining what promises to be a very interesting and insightful breakout session. And before I introduce this session speaker, Elder Little Brown Bear, I'd like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded so others can view it at a later time. And I'd also like to acknowledge the sacred land on which we are meeting today. This land includes the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat First Nations, the Seneca, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, and the Haudenosaunee. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful, honored, and humbled to have the opportunity to live and work with within the Turtle Island territory. I'll add that as a sixth generation white settler, I have the privilege of working and living as a guest on this land. And today I'm offering this land acknowledgement as a starting point for learning how to live in solidarity with Indigenous peoples and nations. Having said this, I invite other settlers to join me in this learning, this work toward truth and reconciliation, and to do so through reflection, research, dialogue, and meaningful actions, both in our personal and work lives. A couple actions I have in mind that I'll put out there for others to consider include purposefully learning more about the complex past relationships between settlers and the Indigenous keepers of this land, questioning and confronting how we, both as a collective and as individuals, have been complicit in perpetuating settler colonialism and the dispossession of Indigenous peoples and nations. So to finish, I'll note we join Indigenous peoples in viewing treaties as sacred obligations that commit both parties to maintaining respectful relationships and to sharing lands and resources equitably. So my hope is that this session today might help us continually learning about, to perhaps center our thoughts and actions on how we can do better in terms of living in solidarity on these sacred lands. Chimigwech, Niohkwá, thank you. Now, it is an absolute pleasure for me to introduce Elder Little Brown Bear. Elder Little Brown Bear, or Ernest Matton, is a highly respected Métis Elder and spiritual ambassador who blends traditional teachings with mainstream information and practices to provide holistic healing approaches for Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal community members. His life and work is guided by a straightforward philosophy, which is that people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. He is the founder and director of the Aboriginal Healing Program for the Michael Garron Hospital Toronto East Health Network, and he's also a sought-after speaker and facilitator in the areas of trauma, mental health, addiction and grief, and he has won numerous awards for his work in bridging cultures and disciplines, and simply stated, for helping so many people. He is a remarkably kind individual who is committed to improving the everyday lives, health, and well-being of both Indigenous and non-Indigenous community members. Elder, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bonjour, Tim, thank you for having me. It's actually a great honor, and it's very humbling to be asked to come and share some knowledge and, to help and to learn from one another on this journey of ours. So I'll go to you for allowing me to be part of this.
Well, actually, before we jump into the discussion, Elder, I want to note something we talked about with respect to the format. And that's just to encourage everybody to feel 100% welcome to drop in comments or questions in the chat. And I'll do my best to pose the questions to Elder Little Brown Bear, or we'll see if we can have you unmute and actually ask the questions directly. The aim is for this to be an interactive session, so please don't feel stressed if you're not sure about the language to use or how to pose a question exactly. This is supposed to be a discussion without any judgment, so please don't be shy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tim. I think that, it's so important to let people know that it's not about being politically correct today. It's just about asking a question. It's better, I think, if you ask here than if you're out in public this way here. And if I don't know the information, I will gather it and then we give it to them afterwards as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, to start things off, I'm wondering if you could start by telling us about the Row Wampum Belt and what it means to you and your work today, and perhaps also what others in healthcare can take away from the Row Wampum Belt?
So my teaching, so I always honor my elder. My elder is Dahaji. He's a Mohawk elder. He's from Wata Territories. And, he taught me about Row Wampum Belt, and it's kept me out of trouble a lot of times because it talks about the 3 white rows and the 2 purple rows. And the white rows are the to love and honor and respect one another, peace, power, and righteousness. And the 2 purple rows are individuals that are in their own canoes and they're paddling upstream. And on that belt that I have, there's 2 figures on there, and there's one with a white heart and one with a dark heart with the hand up. And so the Row Wampum Belt tells us a story of paddling upstream with all the difficulties that we may have or we may share together. But we never get into each other's canoes, because if we do, we will capsize one another. We don't tell each other what to do, but we will pass our paddles or our tools to help people go up that river. We will sit and we will suggest, but we never will tell anybody what to do, because it's not our business to tell anybody. So staying in your own canoe, you won't capsize one another. And it allows us to continue that journey, and that journey of learning together, being on that healing path. If you ever look at whenever you've gotten into somebody else's canoe, you've always capsized it because you had no business being in that canoe. And so what I do here is I worry about what the community needs. I don't go around telling other people what they need to do. I stick within what I'm doing here and then pass my tools. When people call upon me and say, Elder, how would we go about this? Then I will provide that knowledge. But I will not freely go and tell somebody what they need to do. That way there, you don't capsize anyone. You don't gossip about anybody. You stay within what you know. You don't tell anybody else's story because it's not yours to tell. So we love, honor, and respect one another while we're in those canoes. Now, Tim, if you and I ever have a problem, I will go to you with tobacco from left hand to left hand so that we're able to go to a circle and talk about our differences. When you accept that tobacco, that's a contract that you're going to attend that circle. And we will have a conductor or an elder will sit in with us, and then we will discuss our differences, and we will leave as brother and brother, or brother and sister, depending on who you're having difficulties with. But we never become heavy-handed over one another. That's why we always stay in our own canoes. And it teaches us about being kind, about being humble, because we're no better and no worse than anyone else, because we could be in their canoe asking for help. So humbleness and humility. So those 2 Row Wampum Belts, as really, I take it to heart whenever I'm working with any agencies or working with anybody, that I stay in my own canoe.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, you mentioned how the exchange of tobacco and then how you enter into a discussion circle. Could you provide some details on how that discussion would typically go in that circle?
So as we enter that circle, so I would have gone to an elder if I had difficulty with you, and I would explain what I'm having a problem with. And then so he would suggest for me to go present you with tobacco and ask you to come to a circle so that we could talk about our differences. I don't cuss anybody. I don't get upset. What it is we need to talk about what our disagreement is. So if we can talk about it, then we can resolve it in a peaceful manner. Everything that I've always been taught is you walk with soft moccasins. You don't walk with a 2x4. A 2x4, you'll get my attention, but I'm not necessarily going to listen to you. But with soft moccasins and talking softly, we're going to be able to talk with each other, not at each other. And we'll have a talking stick or a healing stone or an eagle feather where we go into that circle. And when we speak to one another, one person will speak, the other person will listen. We do not interrupt each other. And so we will resolve our differences, and then the elder will say what they need to say if they need to intervene, if we're still having those differences, and he will provide a teaching for us to help us resolve those differences.
Thank you for explaining that in further detail. I guess I'm a bit curious right now, Elder, if you have any thoughts on how to carry that into health, like Western healthcare practices.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
So let's talk about the 3 C's to building healthy relationships. So the first C is about communication, about the sending and receiving of a clear message. You can send and receive a clear message, not a double message, not a hidden message, but of a clear message. So I'll tell you a bit of a story. And communication is a foundation for a lot of what we do in between agencies, in between each other, co-workers, family members. So I had a couple that came in to visit with me, and they've been married 42 years. And they were sitting on the couch, and they were back and forth. They were talking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Then all of a sudden, I'm going to call them Fred and Margaret. Fred says to Margaret, "I just want to hug every once in a while." So Margaret was still talking away, and I said, "Margaret, did you hear what Fred said?" She said, "No." I said, "Okay, Fred, tell Margaret what you want." And he said, "I just want to hug every once in a while." And Margaret said, so I asked Margaret, I said, "Margaret, did you know that?" She said, "No, I never knew that." And so I said, "Fred, why didn't you tell her?" And so he said to me, after 42 years, she should know this. So I saw them one more time, and they're doing great. Margaret moved in with me, and he moved to Florida. So everything worked out really well that day. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She didn't believe me.
Yes.
The communication part of it, even though we've been with people for so long, sometimes we say, well, they should know better. That's why communication, the sending and receiving of a clear message, is very, very important. That we don't say, well, they should know this by now. The thing is maybe people don't know that. So we need to take a step back. And when we send that message, every time I send a message, I always ask the person, "Did you understand?" And they say yes. A lot of them say yes. And I say, "Well, what did you understand?" And that's where they go.
Good follow-up.
So the sending and receiving of a clear message is so important to building healthy relationships. And that's not only with ourselves, but that's with anybody that we're working with, our family members, our children, our co-workers, anybody that we're working with. So the sending and receiving of a clear message. Now, the second C is compromising. So by compromising, by collaborating. I always hear a lot of times about people, what's this word they use? Working in a silo, working by themselves and not collaborating. Compromising, doing something that the other person is suggesting we do. Those kinds of things. Collaborating. When we collaborate, we can get a lot more done than just working by ourselves. We need to share the information. In the mainstream, they always say that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. For me, our power comes from our knowledge that we share. Because the more we share, the more people can get on their healing journeys, can use the information to help other people. We don't hoard the information. Knowledge is not power to us. Our power comes from our knowledge, the ability to share, the ability to collaborate, to do things together, walking arm in arm together in the community. We sit together and we share the information. We heal through other people's stories in a healing circle. People will share. That helps us to heal. So we share our knowledge. So collaborating, compromising between agencies with family members. Oftentimes, I always hear this, it's my way or the highway. For me, I would take the highway then, because if you're not going to share, there's no conversation to have. So we need to walk with those soft moccasins and able to collaborate and able to share and compromise what we are doing together. The third one is commitment. And commitment is very important. We always hear a lot of pretty words and things and these promises and everything that people will talk about, that this, that, and everything else. The thing is a commitment is following through with what you say that you're going to do, making it important to complete the task that you committed to. So an example, 10 years ago, when I took over the program and changed it, I was presented with a tobacco tie. And so a tobacco tie was presented to me from left hand to left hand. And I was asked to take over the program and redo it and do what I needed to do to help the community. And so I took that tobacco tie. And so for my first 2 years, my commute was 6 hours a day, every day. Commitment that I make for the community. Then I got smarter and I moved closer, of course. And now for the past 8 years, it's only been 4 hours a day, every day. That's the kind of commitment that needs to happen. So if you're working with somebody, you're making a commitment. That's the commitment that's needed to build this relationship. A contract, this is a contract to me. A piece of white paper, I can sign it, but I can rip it up. This I cannot. So for me, the passing of tobacco is a contract that I'm making to fulfill what has been asked of me. So communication, compromising, and commitment, the 3 C's to building a healthy relationship. And then if you continue to do that, you have to learn love is an action without expectations. We do what we do because we want to do this. We don't do this for glory or fame. We do this because people are truly in pain. So love is an action without expectations. If you have an expectation and it's not fulfilled, then you become disappointed. Disappointment leads to resentment. Resentment leads to anger. So if you're going to do something, you do it because your heart is into it, because you want to do it with no ulterior motives, with no hidden agendas, because you want to do it. So if you're going to build those healthy relationships, it's very important not to have expectations.
Thank you very much. That was certainly insightful. And I'm just thinking, when you say not doing it for glory or fame, adding to that, not taking these actions due to for institutional responsibilities necessarily, or even expectations of others, but just like from deep down internally, from your heart, wanting to take those actions. I have one question that I've mentioned to you previously that I'm quite curious about, and I'd love if you could dig into it a little bit. And that's, what are some things that can be done to make healthcare environments, so I'm thinking about their interiors and their exteriors, what can we do to make westernized healthcare environments more welcoming for Indigenous patients and their families?
Well, I can speak about what we've done at Michael Garron Hospital. Bring in a more holistic approach. In the mainstream, we talk about self-care 8 by 8 by 8. 8 hours work, 8 hours play, 8 hours sleep. It's 168 hours in a week. I use the medicine wheel to bring harmony and balance. So our more holistic approach for me is the psychological, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual aspect. 6 by 6 by 6 by 6, by finding a balance that helps the individual. You need to look at what the individual needs. So by bringing a more holistic approach. So if you want to look at the inside of a hospital, we've done murals, medicine wheels, spirit animals, the traditional medicine wheel colors, to bring a more welcoming invitation to the Aboriginal population. We have a sweat lodge on the property where we conduct sweats, although right now because of COVID we don't. But we've had sacred fires to honor individuals, to honor certain days in the months. So we've done sacred fires as well. So those types of things healing sessions. We've taught staff how to smudge so that if one of our Aboriginal brothers or sisters are in hospital, they're able to offer them a smudge. So making it more welcoming, learning how to say, even the language, learning how to say bojo or kwe or tanse, just that's a welcoming that they know that you've taken the time. And so that's very respectful of doing that sort of thing. We now at Michael Garron permanently one of our traditional soups, Three Sisters soup on the menu. So every Thursday they will be serving Three Sisters soup to the community members that are in hospital. You know, a lot of times I find that mainstream agencies or institutions, or they want to do these big things. And sometimes it's the smallest things that have the most impact. Learning how to say miigwech or chi miigwech, like thank you to someone, has a really great impact, knowing that a person took the time to do that. So doing those kinds of things in a hospital setting, for me, working in an institution, for us, it's like working in the belly of the beast, because they haven't been too friendly. And they haven't been. I mean, I've had occasions where community members have gone into emergency departments, and before their file was read, they were very welcomed. Once their file was read, they were asked to leave, drug seeking or whatever was going on. That is not friendly. If you're basing a file on a person that's sitting in front of you now, so you need to look at, one thing is the traumatic issues, the blood memory, intergenerational impacts. Look beyond, and what's the underlying issues? So I think if people can be more open that way, I think that we can start to change things a little. The system is broke. We know what's broke. We're always telling people, bend to the system. The system's broke. So we think sometimes the culture's too big to change. We forget, though, that we're the culture. We need to start changing. And changing may be showing some vulnerability, asking for help. I don't know everything, and I'm still learning. I still learn from the community members that come in here. I learn every day. I'm humble enough to know that. So to make a shift, to change a little, to help that. We don't build healing centers. We build healing journeys, and that's what we do for those individuals. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, very much so. that was fantastic. And I think what I'm taking away from it, and I actually really appreciate the examples that you provided, just with, as you mentioned, doing these actions, taking on these meaningful actions from the heart. And, the Three Sisters soup example, not making a great big announcement or anything about it, just putting it on the menu in the hospital. And it's just a meaningful sign of welcoming. And to also take it on the training side with smudging, the physical environment that you spoke about. It's applicable to all aspects. I wanted to bring in Ron Bueling, if I may. Greg, can you bring Ron in so he can ask a question? Or Ron, you might just be able to.
Yeah, I can.
Perfect.
I can bring in myself.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, Elder Little Brown Bear, for everything that you've just offered this group this morning. One thing that really struck me was your speaking about communication and listening, and and also the note that you just made about balancing or resisting the temptation for grand overtures and the building of edifice, and actually having substance behind the works that we're trying to do. I just wanted to come back to the idea of listening, and as I'm, my daughter is in a clinic right now with my wife, and I was getting a text indicating that she she needed something, and the technologist was basically saying, oh, I have another patient. Like there's this rapid cycling of people through the healthcare system, and in a manner that doesn't actually permit sufficient time for listening. I mean, there's all of the ears in the room, but is anyone actually hearing what you're trying to say? And I would say that my experience, time and again, and this isn't really like a slight against clinicians and physicians and pediatric care who have a tall order, but I mean, I think we could all be doing a little bit better job of listening to one another, and taking a moment to try to understand what's happening in that moment in the clinic. I have myriad examples of where there's a failure of listening that ends up producing a considerable upset, not just for myself, but for other families. So I really appreciate what you were saying about communication and walking softly. That's really all I wanted to say.
Ron, it's so very true, but we need to actively listen, Sometimes we say we listen, but we don't really listen, but we say we're listening. So a good example would be, so let's do this. Good morning, Ron. Repeat after me. Say the sun, but not the moon. Go ahead.
Well, I have a mild hearing impairment, so I'm gonna try to get off the hook. Say the sun and not the moon.
No, you're saying it wrong. So let's do this again. So Ron, good morning. Repeat after me. Say the sun, but not the moon.
Say the sun, but not the moon.
No, you're saying it wrong. Now when we talk about active listening, okay?
We could be here all day.
Well, not really, but let's give this one word. Listen, do you have a pen in front of you?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get you to write it down, okay?
Okay.
So, good morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Repeat after me, please. Say the sun, but not the moon. Go ahead and write it down. Say the sun, but not the moon. And then I'll have you repeat it back to me.
I'm probably still not picking it up. What I'm hearing is say the sun, but not the moon.
No, you're saying it wrong.
So, yeah, not going to happen.
So I tell you what, when we talk about active listening,
I picked up good morning, Ron. I got that part.
So ask me the same question.
Well, I can't ask you the same question because I can't repeat back to you what you.
Well, just ask me what I asked you to do.
So what did you ask me to do?
So good morning, Ron. Repeat after me. Say the sun, but not the moon.
Right. I'm not sure what you're asking me to do now.
Just do what I've just done to you. Do it to me.
Okay. Good morning, Elder Little Brown Bear. Repeat after me. Say the sun, but not the moon.
Good morning. The sun.
The sun.
The instruction is to say, but not like.
Don't say the moon.
Oh, say the sun, but got it. Say the sun. Yeah, right.
So
there we go.
So that's
after the keynote run.
We say that we listen, but are we actively listening? And I've done this to a room full of doctors once, and they got pretty upset at me because they thought they were saying it right. But when I pointed it out to them, they said to me, you know what, you're so right. We say we're listening, but are we actively listening to that person? And I have a little fun with it too, right? Because people always do that, right? They always say that until they figure it out and they go, oh, that's right. The sun, not the moon. So thanks, Ron, for.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be to be a tool in today's session.
Oh gosh.
In more ways than one.
But again, right, the communication was very clear, the sending, receiving of a clear message.
Absolutely.
So the active listening for the communication. But listen, you're not the only one. I mean, like I said, I've done this a lot, and a lot of people get fooled with it because they're not really listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're going to listen, and I had to learn this as well. And so I really, when I sit down in front of somebody, nothing disturbs me except I am sitting looking at this person. When I worked in mainstream, I had 20 minutes to see a client. That's what they call them, clients.
Mm-hmm.
But the Aboriginal stream, I call them community members. And I will go on a reserve and I will spend 2 or 3 hours. We'll have tea, we'll have bannock, we'll discuss, we'll talk about everything. There's not a time limit. And I realize that people work on time limits. I don't work on a time limit here. So in the program that I have, there's no waiting list. Somebody calls, they do an intake, they start immediately. There's no time limit. I've had people coming here for 8, 9 years. And they come for the support because we provide support before, during, and after. So it's all of those things that we need to learn. So the smartest people in the world are the people that can learn, unlearn, and relearn again. And that's what we need to look at, is to learn, unlearn, and relearn again. So I blend mainstream information and practices with Aboriginal teachings. So I hope that answers your question about actively listening.
No, thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Elder. I like the last point on learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I also enjoy you giving my former PhD supervisor the gears a little bit.
I'll probably pay for that later.
No. I'm just thinking, I know we've got about 10 minutes left. Given that this is a research symposium, if you have any suggested practices or thoughts about engaging Indigenous communities in research that you think BRI scientists and trainees should keep in mind as they go forward?
Well, I think being genuine, being honest with things. I know a lot of times there's been a lot of research done on Aboriginal people. And a lot of that research, the information gets taken away and into a black hole. It's never shared back. We don't know what happens to it. So I think we need to be more open and letting people know what the information is going to be used for, but bring it back to them and say, this is our findings. We need to share that openly. It's not a secret, like share it openly in the community. I share everything that we're doing. So everybody is aware of what's going on. It's not a secret. And I think a lot of mistrust comes from that, not clearly communicating what is going to be done. So telling people up front and then committed to following through with that. Learning about our traditional medicines is going to help for individuals. If somebody's coming in, learning about why we smudge, the sage, the cedar, the lavender that we use, the sweetgrass, the tobacco that we use, having an understanding from a research lens to have an understanding if somebody's coming into the office that are Aboriginal, offering, saying, I have a smudge bowl here if you would like to smudge at any time. Would you like to smudge beforehand? So showing that respect of doing that. If you're looking for information, provide them with a tobacco tie. That is very respectful, being able to provide that. It's so respectful. Walking again with soft moccasins. The way you sit, don't sit over, sit back, be laid back a bit. Let them, when you ask a question, and I've seen this done because I've gone in with people and I've had to tell them to slow down. It's like an interrogation. Let them, They don't think about it. They feel what their answer is going to be. Give them some time to formulate that answer so they can answer you in a good way. You have to be of a good mind, of an open mind, and of an open heart to continue to do that. Honesty. What does honesty mean to you, Tim?
Something I haven't given, significant reflection on, but maybe that's something that I need to do myself.
So I'll give you
Really
the answer.
unpack that.
I will give you the answer.
Okay.
Honesty is simply this. We never have to remember the last thing we've ever said. Because if we're not honest, we got to remember the lies, how we told the lies, when we told the lies, how many times we told the lies, how many times we changed the lies. So honesty is simply not remembering what the last thing you said. So if you're being honest in the research,
I like that. Yeah.
that way there. So in the mainstream, people will say, you need to earn my trust. And I hear it a lot.
Yeah.
And for me, you earn a paycheck. You gather trust. You gather the trust, right? And how do you gather that? Through your commitment to following through with what you say that you're going to do. When you gather the trust, then you can start to work with individuals. And that's why my philosophy has always been that people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. If you can show that, you can build that bridge between hearts, then and only then the trust can start to be gathered.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in just a couple comments in the chat, actually. I'll read them aloud just to see if you have any thoughts on them. So Barbara Gibson writes, she agrees with this great conversation. Clinicians are trained to listen for particular kinds of information and trained to think in particular clinical reasoning frames. This is a systemic issue with many layers that has to be unlearned. Clinicians are open to listening differently, but they need institutional support. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
What? It's true, but you got to go from an open mind and an open heart. I was highly trained in the mainstream world, but I also blend with the Aboriginal teachings. So
right.
I listen from my heart. I have my boundaries that I have professionally as well, because I have to maintain them. Even as an elder, you got to maintain certain boundaries. But I listen from my heart. And that's what I'm saying about the culture needs to change. We're the culture. We can change things. Soft moccasins.
Yes. Okay. Fiona Mula adds in a comment building on Barb Gibson's comment saying, I'm also wonder if there's room for truth and reconciliation in healthcare spaces.
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. So if you look at Michael Guerin, I am so blessed to be part, I don't call it a hospital, I call them a family, because that's what they are to me. They're a family there. And truth and reconciliation, if you look at that word, truth and reconciliation, commitment, following through with what you say that you're going to do. When I sat with the executive committee over there, I said to them, they had a great opportunity to become an innovator, not an imitator. We have a sweat lodge. We have a room upstairs in pediatrics, the healing room for moms and babies. We have on the palliative care unit, a whole mural about a person coming into the eastern door and going through the western door up to the sky world. We have those things. We're going to have a smudge room inside the hospital for families, the All Nations room. So you want to talk about truth and reconciliation. Our CEO, Sarah Downey, and I say this quite openly, she's non-native, but she's got one of the biggest Aboriginal hearts that I've ever come into contact with. Following through the commitment that her leadership has provided, and everybody else at the hospital. My Ashkobeo I have helpers there. Christine Devine is one of my helpers there. I have Suzanne, that's a helper here at the program. All of that commitment, that is about truth and reconciliation. Reconciliation, I call it now reclamation, and that's what we're doing at the hospital. I hope that answers your question.
I can just picture Fiona nodding her head.
I'm very passionate about what I do, and I just am. I'm here to help the community, here to help the members. Anybody presents tobacco, I will offer those teachings whenever I can.
For everybody on the line, where would people find the tobacco ties that you mentioned? How do they go about getting them in case they do wish to engage?
Well, no, they have to make them.
Okay.
So you get a piece of cloth, you put some tobacco in it, and then you tie it, and then that's what you would present. You can use a red cloth. They have to be out of a cloth. We don't put our medicines in plastic. It's in brown paper bags or wooden boxes.
Okay. I'm realizing we're getting short on time. So Elder, I'll just finish by asking if you have any final key messages or takeaways, anything that you'd really like everybody, watching to take away.
So there's a couple of things I'd like to just to talk about. It's pretty sad to know that our lives have reached a critical tipping point right now. Just think about it. And the scary part is, who would ever have thought it could have come to this? We continually move away from the human world to a cyber world, which is where we're at. Just think about this. As we sit back and open our eyes and take this moment so that we can realize that a big part of our lives and work has shifted away from the human touch to a world that I call cyberspacism. Think about it. When humanity is lost in perfection, then the profession itself has been lost. It is really great to live in this so-called 21st century. Instead of making history, we are so busy deleting it all the time. Cyberspace, or I call it cyberspacism, is now where we do more of our shopping, more of our dating, more of our friendship making, more of our learning, our commerce, teachings, of course, more of our communicating. As more and more of our lives become cybersized, that becomes downright scary. And we really need to look at that, because we have truly gotten away from that, and we need to get back to more of a more human ability. So a lot of the times we thank the creator, we thank the ancestors, we thank the spirit animals and stuff. So if there is no peace in the world, then there must be peace in our nations. If there's no peace in our nations, then there must be peace in our communities. If there's no peace in our communities, then we must be peace between our neighbors. If there's to be peace with our neighbors, then there must be peace in our homes. And if there's no peace in our homes, then there must be peace in our hearts. You help to heal the person helps to heal their families, the families helps to heal the communities eventually helps to heal the nation. So again, my philosophy is simple. People don't care how much you know, they do want to know how much you care. And I'd just like to add, Tim, if anybody has any questions afterwards, they can email me if they want personally at littlebrownbear@bell.net. And I'll be very happy. I know our time went really quick. Holy jumpings.
Yeah, it did go very fast. Good. Well, I'd like to thank you on behalf of Hull and Bloorview just so much. This has been remarkably insightful, and we really appreciate you being so generous with your time. I think everybody on this call would likely agree that this has been super helpful. And I feel motivated to do more in my personal life and work life hearing you speak. So thank you so much.